Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special impromptu episode of This is Revolution Podcast Reaction. This is a new thing that we are trying out. We are going to be airing video essays every Monday. Generally, the video essays are going to be coming from the TRI family, Pascal, me, Jean Bajlan, and of course, Cuba has a very good two-part history on the Russian Revolution. So please check those out. There's a playlist for it. It's TIR Presents Video Essays. And most of you just watched a video essay that I finally did on a piece I wrote a few months ago called I Was a Teenage Anarchist. And if you watch the video essay, there's links in the essay to the piece. I got to go on a few shows and talk about the piece. Definitely, I'm not talking about every single subgenre of hardcore punk and every single band in the genre. I was using it as an analogous for the state of the left that we're in now, and a good way to talk about the cultures of deconstruction and the cultures of authenticity that kind of work to neutralize any sort of movement. So here with me today, I brought a few friends along that I know first and foremost from doing music. And one of the friends is the man who designs everything for This is Revolution. Not only does he design everything for This is Revolution, but he's the one that called me up and said, "Hey, don't take offense to this, but I think you should change the name of your show. And you have a song lyric where you say, 'This is Revolution.' And I think you should call the show 'This is Revolution.' And I got some ideas for you." So I would not be doing what I'm doing now, looking the way it is now, had it not been for this gentleman right here. So please welcome Michael Cobra. So I had to give you a shout out. And to the whole Cobra family, actually.
So yeah, no kidding, right? All the Cobras are involved.
Because
funny,
Mama,
man. You say that, and I forgot about that conversation until you mentioned it. To be honest, because you've done so much with it since that it has built its own life out of that conversation that we had. That was it was rad, and it also like having that conversation. Like sometimes it's hard to hear that shit. Right? Like it's hard to hear like, "Hey man, I think you could take this up a huge notch if you did X, Y, or Z." Right? And that shit's hard to hear sometimes. I know like us both being in bands, holy shit, every reaction and, "Oh, you know what you should do," or "What you guys really need is," right? Like
what you should do is.
Yeah. Like I used to be in a band where we didn't have a bassist, and oh my God, every show was, "Hey, if you guys ever need a bass," or "What you really need is," and yeah. So I know what that feels like to be on the other end of that conversation.
Well, we both were in drummerless bands for a minute. You were drummerless for a minute. So you know what that's like. Like, oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Thanks, man. But we're good. But yeah, like hearing that too and being open to it and open to that kind of growth and shit is
you've changed. It changed the trajectory of my life, especially after COVID with this show. As you know, I was one that toured a lot. So I can't ever say thank you enough. And I'm very, very honored that you were going to show your face so people can actually see the man that convinced me to change the name. It was called Soundwaves originally because I lived in Soundwave Studios, which Mike knows. And I wanted to talk more about music, but silly me always injected so much politics in it. Mike was like, you talk about politics way more than music, man.
Yeah, but that conversation was minimal in comparison to what you all have done with it, right? Like that was, you guys have done a ton with this, and it's pretty phenomenal. Like the traction that you all have gotten, the guests you're getting, everything. Like we talk about this. Right?
Oh, it's nuts. It's nuts.
It's nuts. It's badass.
And check this out. I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for our next guest, who sometimes I get to play with. also has spent some time with me in the studio that I lived in for so long. He's definitely been around the country. I don't know who's logged more miles. I'll say Conan's probably logged more miles just because he did it for a lot longer. But if you took those gas receipts, I think we'd be a little closer than you think. He is the co-host of another show that gets aired here on This Is Revolution Movie Night Extravaganza. He is my homie, another one of my dogs, Conan Neutron.
Unbound, undefeated, Protonic reversal, Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends. We up in here. Let's go, baby. Let's go.
So let's get to the topic at hand. I wrote this.
I don't get the long glowing. I was just like, maybe more miles. I don't know. I did some miles too.
You know what?
You did a lot of miles, motherfucker. By the way, you did a lot of miles.
Look, I've given you fat ass shouts out on numerous occasions.
I appreciate it greatly. And I'm going to echo what Cobra said, which is that like seeing this grow into what it has become has been fantastic. And I say that as I think I was Soundwave's first subscriber. I definitely was on one of the first guests for sure. And that was good, but it was sort of like, this is good and it's going to get better. And lo and behold, it did. And like this empire has now beautiful.
And now I have $47.
Well, I'll get
exactly.
Conan a shout out. Has this like Conan and I first met because of Protonic Reversal, one of his shows, which also, holy shit, has blossomed. And
yes,
like
when I had Happy Fangs on, like real early on. That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, like super early on. It was in a studio.
All of us are band people that definitely relate to the topic at hand. All of us have toured to some extent, internationally to some extent. So we understand both of those cultures of deconstruction and authenticity that work to fuck up a scene.
Well, and that was one of my main things with Protonic too, is to like not just have the people that you do know, but the people you should know also. Like, you know, and that's I don't know. I love that this, I don't know, essay, like video, like what are we calling this thing you did? Like I like that it's making the rounds. Video essay, sure. All right. It's making the rounds. And I like that because this is something that's it's kind of like you didn't know you needed it, right? So
yeah.
That's how I'd characterize it.
So I start the video off, and I started off with the Sex Pistols on the Bill Grundy show, which is kind of an iconic interview where they curse, and that's like usually what people know about is like, you dirty fucker, like that's what the starts off. And having to watch it a million times as I'm cutting it, I never really noticed that Bill Grundy makes a pass at Susie Sue Banshees, and that's why they start yelling at him. And there's another line where he asks them about signing a very large record deal, and isn't that against all of their, you know, punk rock ethos, signing this big fucking deal and working for the man? And they're kind of like, no, not at all. What we want to do, we want to get money and pussy. What did you think when you first saw that interview, Conan?
Well, I mean, for me, the vulgarity wasn't necessarily the appeal for me, even as like a younger, more rowdy young man. It was the righteous indignation of knowing that, like, like this dude was a sleaze to their friend Susie, who was just there, like, you know, as like part of like their friend group, and it was like, get the hell with that guy. That's great. I mean, that's a great, punk rock versus traditional media kind of clash, like a classic one, not the Clash, but a clash for the time. And you know, it's great that they had a few moments like that and were able to parlay that into something greater. You and I somewhat disagree about the boy band aspect and the presence of Malcolm McLaren being a benign or helpful influence versus something different. But that's okay. You don't have to disagree in it to not acknowledge its cultural import, which is to say seismic. Seismic important.
Yes. I can never deny that. I give less of a fuck on how they got put together, more of a fuck on their cultural importance for the way the music still looks today in 2022. What about you, Cobra?
I was just gonna say real quick, there's like still a 15, 16-year-old every year that's gonna find that record, right? Yes. Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've seen that video clip many times, right? And in various forms, and cut down and watched the entire thing multiple times. And it's always interesting to me because we all saw it post them falling apart, right? Post knowing everything about, and almost guarantee that all three of us saw that video clip after knowing a shit ton about the Sex Pistols, what happened to them, how they were formed, not formed, whatever it was. And it's always interesting watching it because of the issue with Susie Sue getting hit on, which I think was great. But also, they're just irritation with having to deal with even being there. Specifically Johnny Rotten's, which is his ethos and like his character, right? That he plays all the time.
Yes.
Why does he show up to everything, but then doesn't want to be there, right? It's definitely a tough character play.
I don't even want to be on this panel. I'm going to dominate for the next 45 minutes.
Exactly. Right. It's a shtick, and he was playing it very early on, and it's always interesting seeing that. No matter your opinions on the Sex Pistols, because we all have them, and it's hard not to, but at least Rotten like stuck with that, right? Like, mind you, he became a prick later in life and said some very stupid things, but he stuck with that shtick, and the rest of the band members didn't, right? Like, he kind of stuck with it, which I don't know what the fuck punk rock is, but at least he stuck to what the fuck he was, right? Like, he stuck to his shtick.
That's what's kind of interesting, and I'm trying not to jump all over the place, but when putting it together, there's a decent amount of footage that I had to watch, because originally, as I was telling Cobra, and I'll tell the people watching right now, originally when I put it together, I was talking in front of this camera. That's why I have so many punk backdrops, because I was changing them for every different part of the thing, different albums that I really appreciate that make me musically who I am. And all of that because of the internet connection, I wasn't able to upload it. So last minute, I had to, cut footage and watch footage to cut and all that other shit. And in doing all that, I found, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, I found part 3 to The Decline of a Western Civilization, where Penelope Pierce, it's less about the music, because I think she found it kind of uninteresting at this point in the mid 90s, and actually follows a group of what we would call gutter punk kids, and she found that way more compelling and interesting, and the distributor didn't think it was going to be a good movie, so it never got
distributor agreed, as it turns out. Yeah.
He's like, well, this is depressing as shit watching these fucking homeless kids. And when you watch the first one, it's definitely a suburban outgrowth. The second one is almost tongue-in-cheek, because that gets pushed out by the very, very Reagan-friendly, decadent sounds of hair metal. And in the 90s, so many years into austerity, and even Clinton era austerity, what has punk become? But I think she might have found, and again, I don't know her. I would love to have her on the show and ask her these questions. It feels like she almost found a little cliche, even though if you juxtapose the first decline in the bands they had on there to the third decline in the bands they have on there, the third decline, the bands are letting you know, like, we're very political, we're against the right wing, again, it's the 90s, so the moral majority is definitely in full swing, as we all know. And that's the problem that we have right now is the far right, just them. Whereas this first movement was just kind of all over the place, and they just Were they rebelling against authority? Were they rebelling against Reagan, or were they rebelling to rebel? I don't know.
There's like a naivete to it, right? Like where it's what's sort of like just the act of rebellion itself is in and of itself an identity, which it's like you can't really do that anymore. Like that doesn't really fly in the same sort of way. Like it's you're going to be pushed onto a side, even if you don't choose one. And that's something. And as far as sides of Sex Pistols versus PIL, I think PIL is fantastic, by the way. But PIL has a lot of horrible music. Sex Pistols, they broke up quickly, so they didn't get a chance to tarnish their legacy with terrible records. But I do love PIL. PIL was mentioned earlier. That's one derivation I'm going to make one comment on, and one comment only. And what is it? The Public Image is Rotten, the documentary, worth a watch. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Even if you think you know everything about John Lydon, it's worth a watch. It's good. It's got my dude Martin Atkins, friend of the show.
Oh, Martin Atkins.
Yeah. Nice. It's funny, those decline movies, like the third one I couldn't even finish. To be
hard
honest.
Watch.
Harsh toke.
It was harsh, but it was also like I knew those kids, right? Like not those specific kids, but those were some of the kids that I was hanging out with at that exact time in the 90s, right? Like those were some of the kids I was hanging out with, like in Denver and things like that. And it felt really close, like way too close. And it was hard to watch because of that. But that first one, it was funny watching your video today. I haven't seen that first decline since I was in high school or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember watching it and largely because Black Flag was in it and being really intrigued by that, right? And seeing early Flag and what that looked like when they were living in the church and how they sounded and everything. But I had honestly kind of forgotten about the whole burnout culture of punk rock and how that was a part of punk rock early on. And what's interesting is what drew me to punk rock early on was that it was counter to the burnout culture that I was around. And growing up in the Midwest, like you stayed in your small little hometown, people were burnouts. Like all kids did was do drugs and get drunk. And punk rock was the counter of that for me. And it's funny how, in looking at your video and how it kind of connects to the politics of the day, it's interesting how that burnout culture didn't last very long, and new messages popped up and new voices popped up, and it stopped being about 3 chords and getting drunk, right? And it started being about like, shit, I have something to say, and maybe this is a way I could say it, right? So anyways, not getting too deep into it, but I wonder if that's also a place where like maybe some of the stuff that's happening right now is going to burn out, because like Conan was saying, people just don't know where to fucking put the anger and the angst and the energy, right? And once you get it focused, it changes that.
And picking up an instrument was a great place. I do want to address this super chat. Can you ask the guests about the crust punk demonstrator kids who became quote unquote Law and Order JRE fan fascisti as soon as they get mortgages and have babies?
I'd love to. So, what I would say, which very eloquently put, by the way, I think that there's punk rock, the musical genre, and there's punk rock, the life ethos. Yeah. And by life ethos, I mean a doctrine of critical thinking, ideally, humanistic, healthy disdain towards establishment, but a belief in communitarian efforts. And for some people, it is not, and for some people, it's a fashion accessory. And for some people, they'd be like, "Oh, I used to be into punk rock," and be like, "Bitch, what are you talking about? I am punk rock."
Yeah.
Like, there's a difference between those things, right? Like, I might be sitting here like looking like a Liberace looking motherfucker up here, but I am fucking punk rock, like to the core. And I mean that in terms of what punk rock taught me, the DIY ethos. Again, the become the media. This is become the media. Like, this is what you do. And it's not like something that you grow out of if it really deeply affects you that way.
something you grow deeper into, man. Like, if anything.
Absolutely.
That was kind of the main focus of my written piece, was that I felt like there are real punk dudes that we all know, and we'll just leave them nameless in here, right? We don't want to name drop who we all are
that kind of show,
with,
yeah.
right? In real life. And a lot of the writing for the original essay came from countless conversations in that studio with a lot of these people that we all know, that some of them were probably in that piece that you guys saw. And there's also people that I always felt like, well, I get that you're punk rock and you did the punk rock thing when it was a new thing, but was that just your entree into the mainstream? And that was kind of your goal all along, a la the Sex Pistols in the intro of that clip, where when Grundy asked them, well, isn't this large record deal kind of against your anti-authoritarian ethos? And they're like, no, not at all. This is why we do this shit, because we want to be fucking rock stars and do rock star shit.
I mean, I know that, like, I'm co-host on a movie show now, so using a movie quote is going to be a little cliche, but like, think of like Dark Knight Rises, like Bane, right? Like, oh, you think punk rock is your ally? I was born into it. I was molded by it. Like, it's like replace darkness with punk rock, right? And that's how I feel about it. You know, because it's Hot Topic, I guess, isn't really a thing anymore, right? But I remember when I got pissed off.
Fucking stores are still around.
Are they? All right, I don't know. I mean,
Cobra got kids. He'll tell you, Cobra.
I got a mini golf.
Yeah.
Wow. I just remember, I'm old enough to remember being really pissed off that it was like, what? Punk rock doesn't belong in the mall? Are you kidding me? Like, no, that's not what that is. And then, of course, little did I know that's all it was going to be for the next like 6-7 years, right? But you know, like, I was incensed by it in the same way. And there's something that comes up in Protonic Reversal a lot, is the idea of talking about the concept of selling out, which was a big deal, heavy in the discourse when I was coming up.
Yes.
Which nowadays, the idea of selling out, like, tell that to, like, you know, like some young bloods coming up, they're going to be like, what? What are you even talking about? Yeah. Of course I want to be on an Apple commercial. How else would I get my music?
Yeah, right.
I got a Mac. Why wouldn't I want to be an Apple?
Yeah, like, what?
I made the music on a Mac.
Man, I just recorded this whole shitty album on a Mac.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like, think about the fact that, like, you know, Trans Am turned down like $200,000 because they didn't want their shit in a Hummer ad. Right, because they're like, hey, we can't condone the fact that, like, this is the same, like, appetite for oil BS that got us into the Iraq War, and they made a principled stand not to take the money for that. And, like, people would just be like, what? I don't even understand why you would do that, because the thing is, the commodification, and on your very great show, Jason, when Forrest and I did the movie night most recently, was for Network.
Yes,
the movie Network, which is a great job of showing how you can take something primal, bold, and beautiful which is an incredibly incisive humanistic message, package it, sell it, repeat it back, and make it into a catchphrase. Then you commodify it and you make the money on it. And that's Network that did that. And that movie was made before I was born. And it still is true. Like, the fact that you got Howard Beale, like, you know, the original, like, Howling Man in the Wilderness, which if you don't get chills with that, like, you gotta get mad. Like, God, open your windows right now. Like, it's still an amazing scene. But then, like, you have people like, hey, everybody, what time is it? We're mad as hell, and we're not gonna take it. And they're shouting, it's like the Arsenio whoop suddenly. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me with this? Like, this is like a man, like, who was literally going to kill himself on the screen. And then, like, everything is commodified. Oh, it's like the Bill Hicks bit. Like, oh, that's a good dollar. Like, it's the trap dollar, the rebellious dollar, you know? Oh, that's a very good dollar. Like, it's that times 100,000, and even more insidiously repackaged as style and swag.
Oh, that's a really good point. Like, there's a part. So the Henry Rollins interview, I think you guys have seen that before, probably the Henry Rollins interview. And if you know, it's a lot longer. And I try to chop up because when shit is, if I would have put the whole thing in this video, would have been like, you know, a lot longer. I
would have had a beard like Cobra by the end of it. Be like,
yeah, that whole interview was really sceney. Like if you had to be in the scene and know some of the stuff they were talking about, but ultimately the parts that I cut out were Rollins and the rest of the band, Greg Ginn and I forget who else was there.
Dukowski, I think, right?
Yes,
pre-Kira. So
Bill was there. Kira was there.
Kira was there. Kira was there.
Maybe okay. Maybe
Kira was there for that interview. And so, and because she laughs at the guy when he goes, it's called a Q in England, and she goes, ha ha ha, England, like we're in Dearborn, Michigan. What the fuck do you know about England? So there's a part where, and to give some context, the reason why Rollins was so mad is Black Flag released like 2 or 3 records in about '86, and they slowed down their music, and their hair got longer, and there was a lot of pushback.
Both of which was no bueno in the scene at the time. Neither one of those things, let alone both. Yeah,
they might even have tuned down for My War a little bit. It might even be in drop D. So the sound definitely changes from what the norm is because people now have a manual to follow. This is the haircut I wear. These are the clothes I wear. And these are the songs that I play at said speed. So to me, the most punk rock thing to do would be like, well, that's lame. I don't want to do my own thing. And they do their own thing, and they got massive pushback for it. So the kid's first question is kind of questioning the sound of the new record, which had been going on for some time. And Rollins is just frustrated. And at some point in the conversation, they asked the kid what kind of music he likes. He goes, well, I like it fast. If it's not fast, I don't like it. And they make a joke about another band. We're like, well, this band, you know, they're on SST. They play fast music. And you know what? Their first record sounds just like their second record, which sounds just like their third record. So why don't you go buy that? And he's talking about constant motion, constantly changing, constantly trying to get better. And the kid, it's almost like over the kid's head.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, lots of kids, when they get into it, it's very rigid and it's very focused on 3 chords and anger, right? And or at least early on. And like Rollins was talking about being in a space where they could change and modify and adjust what the hell they did, which is why in hindsight, Black Flag was so badass, right? Because their final album and their first album aren't even remotely the same bands, not even close, right? And so that's what makes them amazing long term, and right. And I don't know, it's fucking boring listening to the same album over and over again.
Over and over again.
Big Damage Part 7, great.
Yeah.
And someone wrote, there's a few comments that people try to highlight. Someone wrote here, 1991, the year punk broke. And I think what's so interesting about saying 1990, and I think that's a book, or an article.
It's a documentary. It's a really good documentary. It's like a behind the scenes documentary. Sonic Youth, Mudhoney, Babes of Toyland, Nirvana, they're all ran around on tour, and it's
Well, and they even did there was a show at that museum in Seattle that they did all around the artist from that time as well. They had guitars.
The Experience Museum.
Yeah. The Experience Museum.
Yeah. Used to be a place called the Fun House. We used to play. I think Jason. I think y'all played there. Actually, all of us may have played
in Seattle.
In Seattle, yeah, the Fun House, the old Fun House.
Yeah, the old Fun, the original Fun.
The original.
With the
I was there not to play, but for New Year's. It was happened to be in New Year's one year, and I saw some dude get up in everybody's face, be really super annoying. And he goes up. Did I tell you the story, Jason? This is one of my favorite stories. He goes up to this man, this very large man, and starts slinging his BS to this guy, who so clearly is not having any part of it. And he just says, "You should walk away now." And the guy just goes, blah, 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 blah. Keeps like slinging his bullshit. The guy gets up, grabs him by the neck, lifts him up, puts him through a plate glass window, turns around, sits back down to the bar to finish his drink. Like 2 seats down, I'm like, that is some Wild West shit that just happened right there.
Because you could do Wild West shit down there.
Awesome.
And I was like, I would, if somebody told me the story, I'm like, yeah, fucking right. But no, like this in real. And by the way, this dude deserved it. If any dude, I mean, like, no one really deserved physical violence. Blah blah blah. This dude deserved it. Fuck him. This guy was being like a sex pest to women. Like he was being an annoying little prick. Like, yeah, fuck him. But yeah, through a plate glass window, real Wild West. Anyway, that was the Funhouse in the shadow of the Space Needle by the Experience Museum. Because we all know the best. We all like music, right? But like when music is in a museum, it's even better because that's a right. That really accentuates the experience of having it in a museum rather than being a living thing. Like when we put guitars and we put them in cases and put them on the wall to be like looked at to remember when people played guitar. Thank you.
But it's funny that it went that far, right? Like it went so far, it broke so much at that point in 91.
That dude is a fan.
It wasn't called punk, but I think because the marketing changed, and this is something I kind of wanted to get to real quick. The virtual Jonathan says, "Would some would like some more discussion on the slap a hand PVC ass suck and bands like Drop Dead who never sold out." The whole purpose of the piece was not to talk about, because again, of course, there's a gajillion bands and a lot of micro scenes that kept releasing records that probably work day jobs and they do it because they love it. That's great. A lot of those people are my friends. That's great. It wasn't about them because they're not the iconic figures of the scene. If they're iconic to you, that's great. That's awesome.
They're happy warriors, right?
Yeah,
they're spreading the message and like, oh, you need the lyric sheet because I can't understand a word this guy's saying, but like, oh, there's great lyrics, yeah, great.
And that feeds into what I was saying about part 3 of the Decline movie, where I think it's Negative Approach she has on there, and I can't remember all the bands, but it was almost like she was kind of bored of it at that time. It's like, you guys are doing the same shit, you're yelling into a void, and in nowhere. She was videotaping. Again, what's also interesting, and you might have to know some California geography for this, and I'll try to put it in context. The first Decline is on the Hollywood Strip, and it's punk invading the Hollywood Strip. That's how big it has gotten, which was very
and it was like an alien invasion, right? Like it was so different that like it was like an alien invasion.
It was an alien invasion in this kind of Bowie-esque glam scene of LA. And then 87, when she does part 2, well, again, the Reagan comeback, Empire Strikes Back of part 2 is a tongue-in-cheek look at the decadence of what that scene looks like in that time frame, right? The decadent hair metal 80s. She doesn't even go back to the LA Strip. She goes to the Showcase Theater in fucking Corona.
Yeah, like to go deep in the belly of the beast, right?
That's not LA. That's not LA County.
No.
She was not in LA. She was at the Showcase Theater, which sadly doesn't exist anymore, in fucking Corona, taping punk bands, still playing for a handful of people. So the point is that this music, while people have persisted doing it, and again, I'm saying this as a person before Corona was existing, doing crazy, weird music. So of course I appreciate the people that have pioneered and done it for so long, right? But here she is, almost 20 years later, and the scene has moved from the Strip to the deep suburbs of the Inland Empire,
to Grandmama's house, exactly. You know,
and so the only Hollywood thing she's recording at this point, because there's a scene going on, I mean, but this different. It's very corporate. It's very pay to play, right? This is 1996, bitch. You're selling tits to play the whiskey, and it's gonna cost you like what, $750 to try to play the whiskey. You got to sell $750 worth of tickets to play there, and this was in 1996. So the scene is very, very different there. And she can't even find it. She has to go all the way to Corona. So that is also, kind of part of the story too. Like, what happens when you keep it so true? You're still keeping it true.
Yeah.
But you can't break into, you don't even have an infrastructure to break into the mainstream, because anything you do to break into the mainstream, will you, and I'm asking the question because I don't know the answer, will you just get co-opted?
Well, that's a heavy question. And okay, so like, let's look at some examples of bands that have had that challenge put to them. Like, okay, let's use recent examples. At the Drive-In. Right? Was At the Drive-In co-opted because they came at it from a place of being like, hey, you know what we love? Like Drive Like Jehu, like Nation of Ulysses, and like we're from El Paso, Texas, which audience may not get this. I know we all get it. El Paso, Texas, not a center of culture, as it turns out.
No.
So
but
these kids,
there.
There is. There's
there.
a damn good scene in El Paso, as someone that loves El Paso and Chico's Tacos.
Because it's just far enough away, right? So you get this world of like people having to, like Missoula or something, where people have to create their own thing because there isn't another option. So then with At the Drive-In, they're good, but it also happens to catch on, and then it gets to the point that like, oh, this could go like next big thing, and then they have that, was it Ross Robinson record? It's like a brick wall massive. The whole thing looks like a freaking candy bar if you look at it as a waveform. It's fucking ridiculous how loud it is, but like. Everybody At the Drive-In's next. Oh, they're the next Nirvana, this and that, and that band, they cracked. They internal strife and like what the two dudes wanted to go more like artsy crazy direction, and the other three guys were like, hey, let's kind of just keep doing the things that people like, and that band crap. But that was like the last band that like had that real cachet up until like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can make the case for Idols now, but I mean, everything is commodified now. There's not a chance. There is no chance not to be commodified because all of these social media platforms, including the ones we are literally streaming on, are commodified. Yes. These are all Dissent is commodified now. Like there is no avenue of communication that is not monetized and profited by someone, whether it's a person that is on the stream or not. If you aren't paying for the product, you are the product. That is also creativity.
Damn, that's a more that's a more shit right there. Paying for the product, you are the product. There's some interesting things that I cut out also.
Where's the lie?
Kind of an odious individual, who's basically admits to being a bit of a rapist, where he talks about the bands of that first wave of hardcore. They're like, we didn't think we were gonna be on the radio. We didn't do this shit because we were gonna be on the radio. You're fucking crazy out of your mind. He said, and I don't think I put it in there. He says, that's like a black man saying, I'm going to be president of the Ku Klux Klan. None of us thought we were going to be on the radio. So it's funny that you bring up a band like At the Drive-In, who made all the major talk show rounds as At the Drive-In on a quote unquote indie label.
I mean, again, that was so when we talk about your essay, it's largely due to like the 90s and like the gold rush, right? Like I call on Protonic, I always talk about the gold rush days, and everyone always knows exactly what I'm talking about. Having some like Tad Doyle or something on, and he's like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, because it's the same thing. And like look at it in terms of like more Deadwood than anything else, right? But like they let the weirdos in for a minute, and they let the weirdos in for a minute because they couldn't quite figure it out. Then they figured out, oh, we can get people that'll like play the game a little bit. And then like these kids, like it sounds enough like this other stuff that the kids like, and like we can make a profit off of that. So At the Drive-In was a total aberration because they managed to kind of come up with like the Black Flag model, play a million shows, if it's 7 people or 700, give them the same show, give it everything you got, like act like it's your last, 25 minutes on Earth. Like that mindset. And because of that, because of the hard work that they put in, they got not just a fan base, but a fan base that was like ride or die for them. But they also happened to be a band that was getting better at being a band. They wrote better songs. They found out what made them good as a band, why people vibe with it, and they dug deeper. and they found more, and they kept working and working and working. And it's just, I wish that was more true. Like, I wish that happened all the time, but it just doesn't, because the rules change constantly. And what we have now is all of these companies trained everybody to rent their music rather than own their music. So once we've been effectively trained in that way, then it just comes a matter of like, all right, well, we're selling tickets to the show. Like, you want access to everything? Hell yeah, I do. Great. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Here's your Spotify membership, you know, and away you go. And then like, oh yeah, you don't like, you pay like a ridiculously low amount of money that like is insulting to like independent artists. Well, who cares? You know, like what? Well, but it's more like radio. Okay, well, it is. Sure. And if you balance that by like, you know, imbibing on a Bandcamp Friday and buying the bands that you really love, great. I personally have benefited from that. I personally paid power bills off of that, for instance, right? But like, that's not the model. That's the model for people that give a damn. That's the model for people that are like the people most likely to hear or watch this show, that are thoughtful about this, that want artists to thrive, that care about art, that care about creativity, that care about mutual exchange. I hate to break it to you, that is not the majority of people. No. Newsflash, everybody.
And I want to ask this question to the people watching in the chat. You know, I'm going to do something that we never do on the main show. I'm going to do this. We stopped doing this a while ago, but the conversation in the chat seems to be very, very civil. So I'm going to put the chat on the screen so now everybody can see. And this will not be happening tomorrow for the Thursday
Baba
night
Booey,
show.
Baba Booey. Howard Stern's penis.
That's what you get for that. You get that. But oh God, I released 5 projects last year, and Cobra did covers on the majority of them until he was out of town when I did a Christmas one and he couldn't fucking do it. But I released, I think it was like 4 or 5 projects last year, and I didn't put any of them on Spotify, because if I put it on Spotify, which I have to go through a distributor to do that, they won't let me play the music as the music that we use for our video clips and our video essays, and even the show.
Did they give you a takedown?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's why all those releases are all on Bandcamp. Wow. So I'm losing out on ears listening to the music, because like Conan said, Bandcamp is a very niche site.
Yeah, very niche.
Yeah, it's great, but it's so here's something that's funny about that, and I've been on both sides of this is that it is 2 rules, right? Like, so like on Spotify, like, and like whatever, like I actually worked it out. I was like, I'm gonna work out how much money we made on Spotify in the past like 4 or 5 years, and it was like, oh, that's like an average Bandcamp Friday, but that's over the course of like 4.5 years, and we're talking about like tens of thousands of plays, right? Mm-hmm. But that said, Platonic Reversal is like just popular enough that they don't fuck with me on that. Now YouTube will fuck with me. I'm not. Yeah. I ain't strong enough to arm wrestle YouTube.
You can't stop that. YouTube tried to say that my own music wasn't mine.
Motherfucker, I had that same shit happen, and how much fun is that email of being like, here's why I dispute this. So for me, it was doubly so, because it was like, not only am I the person who wrote this music and performed this music, and the name of the show also has my name in it, but also like the name of the band has my name in it. I went to this whole long. They didn't even write back. They just like, all right.
Yeah, they just say fuck it. It took me 2 months to say, oh, okay, I guess this is yours. I was like, yeah, motherfucker, it's totally mine. I'm not saying shit.
I was ready to shake the freaking pillars of heaven about that.
Yeah. So I can't even fuck with Spotify on that tip.
Yeah.
I can't get my shit. I can, but it would put jeopardy a lot of the content that we have up on YouTube from either pulled down.
Which you can't do.
I can't.
Yeah, exactly.
I just can't afford it. The show's not big enough to get demonetized.
So going back to your question about like Conan had brought up Idols. And I actually think they're a really good example of a band who is kind of staying true to who the hell they are while also changing regularly. Like every album is slightly different and takes it even further. But at the same time, because we're dealing in the age that we're in, the Spotify age, and dealing with the fact that they're not making most of their money off of selling physical records and things like that, right? Like they are still going out and doing the shows and the branded shows and things like that so that they can make a living doing it. But it doesn't seem to have impacted their ability to stay kind of on that path, which I think is kind of badass. And I think they're one of the few bands that's doing that right now. And I always kind of compare them, like they're the toxic masculinity version of Bikini Kill, right? Like they're the like they're kind of saying, fuck this. It's not, the shit isn't okay. And that's kind of badass.
Well, and it's something that people need to hear too, right? Like,
yeah.
And also it's a message, sorry to interrupt, but like it's I feel like they're a message band where it's like, oh no, but like pretty good message, but the art's there. Like, granted, you could be like, yo, it's Woke McCluskey. And you're not wrong. Okay, we get it. But like, you're being kind of a dick right now. And also maybe consider the fact that like, you shouldn't be looking at this with the most cynical take possible.
Yeah. But they also, the show is there too, right? Like
it's a fantastic show.
Takes that to a whole other level, to an experience that's like, holy shit, it feels like a movement. And we all know what that feels like. Right? Like we've all been to those shows where it's like, oh shit, this is bigger than this room. This is bigger than the people here. This is bigger than that fucking band on stage. And Idols does that. And I think that's pretty amazing in this thing.
And the people to be salty about like an entire like room of like 800 like early somethings, like just bopping around, having a great time to like crazy ass like weird rock music. You're gonna tell me that's a bad thing? You're gonna tell me that's bad? You're gonna tell me like Idols are bad because ... No, please tell me more. I can't wait to hear the next sentence. It's gonna be fantastic.
Well, that's where it gets there was in different rooms in Jason's house. Well, this house is bigger.
I'm in the guitar room, clearly. Sorry, guys.
No, the guitar room is in Fairfield at Greg Day's place, who has all my guitars right now and amps. What's interesting is, again, that culture of authenticity always brings into play how large you have gotten, and then that takes away from what it's not authentic anymore. Do you guys disagree with that?
I think people love being, so first of all, and shocking everyone, I'm going to respond first, that I think we are trained, once again, we are trained now to react. It behooves all of these platforms that make money off of us every day, 24/7, 365, to react to things, to have a hot take. So-and-so reacts, such and such reacts to this. Did you see the reaction to the reaction? Well, no, I saw the reaction to the reaction to the reaction. Man, I have seen reactions to the reactions to the reactions before I found the actual thing that people were reacting to. Can't even keep up. It's exhausting, let me tell you. But if you keep in mind the fact that that's one of the models that people have to drive engagement, to keep people on these platforms, be it like Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. It's query, advice book, right? Give me advice on X, Y, and Z. Preferably purchasing something, by the way. The other thing is, here's a thing. I don't like the thing. I do like the thing. You're a fucking idiot because you like the thing. Like, so on and so on. And it just only escalates. And then like, look at like, oh, whoops. Uncle Bob's a Nazi now. Like, he clicked on too many things. Like, it doesn't matter like what it is. Like the mechanism of like what the end result is doesn't matter. The fact is, people are being trained to have reactions, usually against things that they don't like. Sometimes it'll be the other way around. It'll be people celebrating what they love. Great. That I'm for. But I think we have to realize that all of culture has been moved in that way, which isn't to say I don't appreciate a good, like, hilarious, ribald one-liner or whatever myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm human. I have a dark sense of humor. I get it. But if you realize that, like, all of this doom scrolling, all of this back and forth, and the so-and-so dunking on this one, who dunked on that one, who dunked on the other one, remember, that's not a bug. That's a feature. Remember, we were trained, and everyone just rolled over and accepted this. It's like we did the Patriot Act, to have a feed. Which, do you want to see the people who you follow in sequential order? No. You will not have that. Or if you do, it'll have to be like a constant, like, daily effort to do. The feed is the feature, not the bug. And we are all living in the feed. And as long as you realize that it's not there for you, it's there for you to be exploited. And maybe it's a symbiotic relationship. Hey, I hope so. Hey, I'm not going to kink shame. But I mean, when it comes down to it, we're all stuck in it, man. Like, you want to talk about, like, the Matrix. Matrix got it right in some ways and wrong in others. Like, they're all profiting off of the people in some way or another. It just isn't directly in that same way, right? So, I mean, that's where we're at. And if you understand that, and you can look at things and, like, come at things with, like, a radical humanism, to, like, understand that there are people behind these usernames, and maybe not be a prick all the time. And if you're going to be a prick, at least be a funny prick. Then, like, you'll make the world a slightly better place. And also, guess what, man? You don't have to react to everything. Not everything needs your opinion. I got opinions on everything. You think I'd spout every single one? Man, I would exhaust myself.
You just got to be on a long drive with them.
Well,
both of us. Imagine Tony. So here's something for people. So me and Conan went on. Thank God it was just the West, right? We did the West, which are long drives in the West, as Cobras from the West. Long drives.
Yeah, I always say we don't refer to things in miles. We refer to things in the hours it takes to drive.
Straight up. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another one of those. Tour tips from three guys that are never made any real money.
But listen to everything we say. It's a gospel, goddamn it.
Yeah, definitely.
This comment right here goes into what I'm writing in part 2. How are younger people supposed to navigate this? I'm in my mid-30s and I barely remember things got to be this way. Imagine people who are 18 and 19. This is the only social context they know. That goes into a lot of what I'm writing about for part 2. I'll tell you guys the working title right now. It hasn't been fully approved by the commission of Bajlan, Dr. Kuba, and Pascal and Touré, but it is the end of history and the rise of pop punk.
The end of the world as we know it in the rise. It's funny how those, like,
it's the fall of the Soviet Union, the Clinton years, the rise of Clinton and austerity politics and deregulation, leading to a short term of prosperity for a lot of middle class people with deregulation in the housing market. Short term, right? Because we all know that the rug got pulled from under a lot of people, and how the music reflected this joyous time, and the also with that deregulation, how that affects radio, large festivals that kind of sort of pop up on the scene, and the commodification of punk post the death of Kurt Cobain. So if 1984 was an important year in the first piece, 1994 is the year Kurt Cobain dies, and it's the year Dookie comes out.
Well, if you want a part 3 to that, you should look at what happened to radio post 9/11.
Oh, yeah.
After that sheet came out that was like, don't fucking play these bands. And how that went through Clear Channel and all of those bands, and what happened to what was on the radio. Holy shit. all heavy music went away. Anything that was angsty, it was out. It was crazy. But to go back to answer your one question from before is like,
before I dominate the conversation for like a half hour. Yeah.
Exactly. No, but like if you get bigger and if you get the praise for what you're doing and you become a larger entity in what you're doing, is that bad? And do you lose it? I think people get lost in those worlds for sure. Absolutely. But not everybody does. And I'm a huge fan of, if you get recognized for what you're doing and can do more of it and it's rad, then fuck yeah, do more of it. If it gives you space to do more of it, and if it gives you space, which there are folks in these worlds, like in punk rock and such, that have managed to turn that around and build community outreach, build areas where they can get kids into music, even if it's not punk rock, just fucking helping get kids engaged and do rad shit, then fuck yeah, do more of that. More of that. Hell yeah. If that means you're a $1 million fucking rock star and that's what it takes to be able to do that, and you can have an impact with those ethos, then fuck yeah, do more of that. As long as you're not losing it. But then there's the bullshit like, now I fucking wear eyeliner and drive a fucking Lamborghini. Fuck those people, man. Like, fuck that shit. That's not, at that point, it was an aesthetic that you were wearing, and now you've chosen a new one because
it was fashion. It wasn't ethos. Yeah. And I think so a couple things that if I may just kind of tag on that. Like, I think it's first of all, it's fascinating that there was a comment and it's blasted right past me over here because I was paying attention. I was like, oh, that's good. And I was like, fuck, I should have written it down. It was like 20 minutes ago. But something along the lines of like there being the impossibility of an underground in this internet age. I don't agree with that. But let me tell you that you have to realize it's a vampiric relationship. That you're on these platforms, and ideally, you're going to get something out of it, and then they're going to get your blood. We know what they're going to get, and they know they're going to get too, because they're going to get that blood. They are going to get that blood. But what are you getting out of it? If you're, I don't know if there's what we do in the Shadows fans. If you're a Guillermo type, you're hoping against hope, maybe that like you'll get turned into a vampire. Or maybe I'll get to be a vampire. And like they'll keep stringing you along and then make it seem like, oh, it's gonna happen, it's really gonna happen, and then it's oh, not you, Guillermo. Like, and look, if you think that like that's what you want, fine. And if you think you're gonna get it, maybe you will. Probably you're not going to, because again, what's the old saying? There's no such thing as a working class in America, just a bunch of temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, that's still real.
To your point, Conan, about like that local scene, I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Like, what is still regional, right? Because music used to be regional. There used to be a Southern California scene. There was a Northern California scene. There was
Salt Lake City.
All those things.
It looked way different.
Palmer, Massachusetts. Whatever. It doesn't matter where it
used to look way fucking different. Yep.
Which is interesting that one of the things that in talking to friends about this and kind of trying to call out like, what the fuck is still regional anymore? Skateboarding is, which is really interesting because it's so connected.
That hasn't changed. Yeah.
And it's so connected to your surroundings and the context. Like if you're in fucking Seattle, you got to fucking skate in parking garages because it rains all the time. Well, you don't have to do that shit in LA. And in New York, it's totally fucking different. People are skating inside, like because it fucking snows and it's cold, right? So there's regional aspects to that. That's how music grew up and regionally. And it's interesting that and I'm going to take this a slightly different direction, but it feels like hip hop is doing that right now. And to be very honest, the most punk rock shit I've heard recently is a hip hop artist from the UK called Bob Villain. And it feels very regional. They're talking about shit that is happening to them right now, right there. and you'll get it because you understand from the news what the fuck is happening. But it's very regional in its approach and what it's doing. And I feel like, and there's guitars in what they're doing and shit, and live drums and all that
thank
shit.
God.
But the reality is, what's that?
I won't listen otherwise, so no.
I won't listen otherwise. But it's interesting that hip hop has become this like you brought up kids, right? Like my son got into hip hop because over the past year or two, because he had a friend that moved to Denmark and they could make music together online. And because of the tools that they had at their disposal, hip hop was the easiest thing for them to make. So they both started digging into hip hop because of it. And isn't that the same shit where it's like, oh, fuck, there's a guitar. That friend of mine has a guitar. It's how a lot of us got into playing shit, was because there was access to, or
access in this day and age.
Awareness
is a very, complex word, especially when we talk about like music and hip hop. And there is going to be a chapter about hip hop and neoliberalism and crime bills, especially in the 90s. And we're actually tomorrow night, if you're a patron, we're going to talk about this new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the reboot, which is quote unquote grittier. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for the new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's a gritty take. Yeah. There's this real right now that a lot of black culture is like, you know what? Let's give people a lot more of the crack era because they really dig that, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Having nothing to do with any of that, I got like 3 or 4 things I can hit on stuff real quick. First of all, it was John Steinbeck that said that quote. Thank you for the citation. Secondly, I agree. Rappers are the only ones who want to be rock stars anymore. And by the way, like as much as like you can turn around and say, Mike Cobra, that like rap is where the more interesting stuff is happening. And like I agree to a certain degree, it's also where the worst possible stuff in the world is happening at the same time, because it is culturally dominant in some ways, but it depends on the strain of rap that you're talking about. By the same token, there's still plenty of things that are great that are happening in rock music, but there's less of an avenue for it because it's not currently the thing that's being commodified and being pushed towards people. Is that going to change? I don't know. Maybe it's jazz music now. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. But I do know the first time I heard Sleaford Mods, which is literally a dude playing a laptop and another dude angrily, like, yelling over it. Like, I was like, this is fucking everything I wanted music to be. This is like the Sex Pistols, but now. Like, this is fantastic. Yeah. And there's a lot of bands just like that. Still bands doing innovative things, not even just like, with unorthodox instruments like lung, just a cello, drums, and vocals, but a band like Tropical Fuckstorm that like is upending the idea of what it means to be a rock band. Third point, also with as far as underground goes, I think that, again, you're the product, right? And so if you're getting something out of it, the thing you're getting out of it is you're building community. If you're building community and you're able to do things that like elevate other people and make everyone feel a little less fucking alone in this lonely ass world, that's great. Just remember, these things are meant to make profit. And if you understand that, if you can engage with that and you can work around that, there are folks that can do things that make incredible online communities. Just remember, at a certain moment in time, it's not going to be expedient for them to continue supporting that, and they will move on. The Eye of Sauron will move on to something else. And so if you are dependent upon one medium to do that, especially a medium that has a feed or has like something where things can be like authored or tailored for a custom experience, that is what will happen. That is now the default. So if you know that, if you walk into it knowing that and know that like, I'm going to use these things for the things that it can give me, great. But don't walk in to think any of these things are here for building community, because they are not. They are there to make money. Flat out.
I mean, yes, I do think there are small pockets of interesting regional scenes.
100%. 100%.
But I will say this, and I know I promised these guys originally, everyone, I said, oh, we'll talk for like a half hour. I had no idea we were going to talk for this long.
Shit, you know you were getting on this goddamn show.
Thank God Cobra and I are on the same time zone. What I will say is on the last big U.S. Or North American tour I was on, U.S. and Canada, micro scenes, I think, really fuck everything up. Because it is so specific. that there's not bleed through. Like you can't have any sort of bleed. And you guys know who I was on tour with on the last big run. And it was just, nope. We are these kinds of people and we want to see this kind of shit. And it was very, very interesting to see the lack of any sort of community outside of the immediate community that was there to see this band. I thought that was actually kind of interesting, you know, when taking a step back as a spectator, because that band totally let us in as big time outsiders. We were totally outsiders to a lot of the venues and the people that we met. So
well, yeah, and so that's that inscrutable element, right? The idea of there being like these petty despots, these gateholders, maybe that depending, you know, that maybe they're the best people in the world and they're very inclusive and they want to bring people into something cool, or maybe they want to try to achieve some power that they lack within their own life and you know, apply that towards being a dick and being, you know, like keeping people out. I don't know. You know, both things happen, and it's all happening in real time. We have elevated everyone's opinion.
Yes,
that is good, that is bad, and that's a whole lot of in between. But remember, like we are living in the first era where it isn't just that everybody can have an opinion, everybody does, and you're hearing about it all the time. So filters become all the more important. So who you trust as your filter is very important, which is why you should subscribe to This Is Revolution, which is the best possible filter you could have for your life. And Protonic Reversal, of course, too.
I wish people could be privy to the fights that are had in TIR production calls over what can and can't or shouldn't be said, or titles we shouldn't use, or let's not talk about this, or we shouldn't go on this show. And like all these are like real discussions we have, because there's definitely something that is a mission statement of mine, which is we try to be like drama free and stay away from certain things and certain conversations. We definitely don't like to name names of certain people and shows we don't necessarily agree with. And there's even political.
I'm right here. I can hear you. No.
we have some big political kerfuffles from time to time. But you know, we have to talk it out, and I wish we'd see more of that, and less of these two cultures of deconstruction and authenticity that definitely were to neutralize any sort of real movement building or even solidarity. So that's kind of the crux of what I wanted to get out with the piece and the upcoming book.
I'm stoked for it, man. I mean,
nice.
You know, and I'm not even a guy like. Look, I love you to death, and you know this, but I do not agree with every word you say. You know, newsflash, as you don't agree with every word I say.
He calls me to tell me. He calls me to tell me, by the way.
Yeah, I'd be like, all right, here's why this is bullshit.
Jason, move to Mexico. No shit. You really are moving to Mexico? Well, you know, I read your piece. I did not agree with this part.
Yeah, here's all these parts I thought sucked. These were great. You know, like whatever. Like here's the post game of all that. But I mean, but the thing is, I know you could do the same thing with me, right? And like, there's people you have in your life that you trust to give you that real talk. Like when Cobra is telling you, like, hey, sound waves ain't doing it. There's this lyric you have called, you know, you say something like, this is revolution. That's what's up. And it is what's up. And you got to have those people in your life to be able to trust, to be like, yep. All right. That is better. You're right. And man, like, I know I come off like a bit like a blowhard sometimes, but I listen a lot. And a lot of times people have something to say and they're just talking. But when there's people that have something to say and it hits, I'm like, okay, that's real.
So I have people that I trust, and you too. Who are those people?
It's just these guys. It's just these three right here. That's it.
This is the micro scene.
This is the most micro scene of micro scenes.
But I think, yeah, you've got to be able to listen too, though, right? Like that's the part of it. And like
ideally,
going back to the stuff about like communities and shit, like you got to have a filter on yourself too, right? Like, what am I gonna go out and say? Like what you were saying about TIR and like the production meetings, like you have an opportunity to define yourself and a community of people, and you could be petty and shitty, and or you could not, right? And I think there's also, I think one of the things, and it's very modern, but, and this sounds like an old guy saying it, which it is, but like we used to have to fucking go out. We used to, and COVID has really fucked a lot of this up, and I can't imagine what it's doing to younger folks right now. But like we used to have to go out. We used to have to meet people. I met Jason by going to a show and walking in and being like, I think I need to know that dude, and just walked up and we started chatting, right? And
too.
that's
I've
the
had
shit
Mike Murkowski. He's the one that hooked us up, like whatever.
But those were muscles you had to build community.
Oh yeah,
right? Like I didn't just friend fucking whatever rock star that is showing me what fucking nature drink they had for breakfast. Like you had to go meet people, right? And I think that's one of the things that no matter what kind of music you're into, whether it's punk rock or hip hop or whatever the fuck it is you're doing, some avant-garde jazz, fucking fusion, whatever. The only way to really do shit is to get out and fucking actually connect with people, right? And actually do things. And some of that's gotten lost, and that sucks. That's shitty. And people think they can replace it. That's the shitty part, because you can't. Like you still got to connect with people in some way, right?
Well, it is.
And can we get along? My question is, can we disagree? Have a conversation about said disagreement, and still work together to build a strong left?
Hell yeah.
Or is it simply that if you disagree with me, then this is a dad talk, because Cobra and I are dads as fuck.
And I got big dad energy, even though I'm not a dad.
Yeah, Cobra's not a dad. Look, you know how daddish I am? I had to tell the daughter, I was like, look, chick, you're working on the show. So my daughter will be screening calls.
Nice. Oh, yeah. Nice. That's
put
smart.
that to work. Yeah.
Put that chick to work. Yeah. But
yeah, to your point, like your question, like, yeah, absolutely we can. But I want to flip back to something we talked about very early, which is like that burnout culture of punk rock and how that weeded out a lot of people, right? Like and it weeded out the folks. Like punk rock tends to weed out the people that it's about fashion and aesthetics and burnout and just rebellion. And it's not about lifestyle, and it's not about holding on to ethos and how you try and live your life. Right. And I think politics, we're in this extreme, like hot point of people, and have been for a while now, of people that are burnouts and are in it because it's fashionable to fucking be angry. And it has been for a while, right? Go to any Midwest fucking town. It's fashionable to be angry for the right just as much as it is for the left. And that anger can only like get you so fucking far before you've got to start fucking living something and being a part of it. And that results in people like doing shit because they give a fuck and sticking it out and it being lifelong. And so, yeah, do we have that opportunity? Fuck yeah. And can we disagree on shit? Yeah. But
I hope so.
I think the three of us could disagree on shit and still show up and laugh and have a good time.
Yeah.
But it takes like also knowing people, knowing that you're genuine, knowing that, I don't know, authenticity isn't always overrated. Like when it's real, right? When it's bullshit and it's crafted as a thing that you can be, that's a whole other, that's not really even authenticity at that point. But like, when you're genuine and you show up and you're a part of something and you're not full of shit, I'll listen to people if I don't agree with them, if they show up that way, right? But if you show up and you're a blowhard, angry prick that you're
or the first moment you disagree with someone, right? Then it's like, well, I can't follow this guy anymore. It's like, oh, come on. That's what it is all of a sudden. Or they did this thing I don't like that. And I'm not talking about like big time things like, oh, there's a sexual assault. Like, yeah, maybe that isn't the person you should follow.
Yeah.
But like little things like they said this instead of that. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, and so I'm going to say a couple things. One of which, it's a lot easier to tear things down than to build things up.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And I want people to think about that, because it's like, that sounds like a cliche, but it's not. And unfortunately, our entire culture has turned towards reacting or tearing down or potentially celebrating the works of others. It's trying actively to turn everybody into consumers. Take of that what you will, whether you're consuming media, whether it's, capitalism, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not here to say that, but that's the role. So one of the most radical things you do, one of the most punk rock things you can do, is to create stuff. Everybody on here, we all create the shit out of some shit. And take of that what you will. Is it for everyone? No, it is not. Because that's another thing. If you try to make something for everybody, you're going to make nothing for no one. It is very rare. It is very rare to hit the lottery of people's attention and to be good, not only just good enough, but be lucky enough to hit the zeitgeist. Man, you'd have an easier time like finding, a needle in a haystack. It's just not going to happen. But it is better to create than to tear down. Another nice thing about the act of creation is less time to get upset about stupid ass shit that you would otherwise tear down.
Yeah, because you're busy making shit, man.
You're busy making stuff.
Well, I want to point out something somebody said early on in this conversation that's about building up and rather than tearing down. But somebody said that Henry Rollins was the luckiest tourist in hardcore. Funny as shit. But that motherfucker showed up, right?
He showed up and he put in
the fucking work.
He put in the work.
And like him or not, I don't give a shit. Like the same kind of shit with the Sex Pistols, right? Like everybody's got an opinion on Henry Rollins. But that motherfucker put in the work. Like, go put in the work. Like if you want an opinion on those things, go put in the work. Go fucking literally get in the van. Go make some shit. Go fucking live it. And I wouldn't call the dude a tourist, whether I like him or not.
No,
like,
that's disingenuous.
It's like the scene. He goes, you wouldn't last a minute. And with Black Flag, and I cut in that one of him like fighting the guy where the guy's punched him in the dick.
Yeah,
and that's why he ends up
he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's why he ends up like wailing on the dude. But it is late.
I got one other thing, Jason. If I just shoehorn this in, it's not a plug.
Yes, of course.
Which is to say, the one thing that I want to mention too is that a lot of folks think that by being a fan of the work of others, it makes your own art less. I fundamentally disagree with that. It actually has the opposite effect. It actually makes it more, because when you make something and you are fans of others that make things and you're fans of each other, that is called community. And that is the only way we're going to get out of any of this shit. Yeah. So be a fan, be an unabashed fan of what other people do, and recognize that it doesn't take away from what you do or who you are. And it's okay. You can give power to others, and the effects may not be immediate, but it's important. Look, man, I've been making records and touring nonstop for 22 years now. Well, a little bit of stopping these past couple of years, but like I never have stopped. But every time I go on tour, I always find like one or two bands. I'm like, man, it was this band in like this city. Amazing, like fantastic. And like most cases, I become like best friends with those people, and like I'm friends for life, and like, we can invite each other's weddings and stuff, but like, that's how community is built. and it's not sexy or exciting. There's no app that you can sign up for it necessarily, but you know it when you see it. It's like pornography. Community. It's like pornography.
Conan has a podcast called Platonic Reversal. Someone's asking, is there a platform where I can access more wise words from Conan? Conan has a music show called Platonic Reversal where he interviews all of his musical heroes from Devo to aren't you interviewing Justin Broderick? Or did you do it
Broderick's
already?
coming up. Yep.
Paige Hamilton from Helmet. Who else did you interview?
Tony Visconti, David Bowie's producer and like close friend. That was pretty poignant stuff. All kinds of people. Look, like I've done this show almost 8 fucking years. Like I've had a lot of folks on, and to be honest, that show is mostly me trying to get what I can get out of other folks, right? Because there seems to be a knack that I have for it, mostly because I've lived this life that I come at it from a place that other people don't. But I'm not kidding. Like I make a special point every year of putting out here are like my favorite records of the year. It's these ones, and like I got so sick of trying to keep it to 10. I was like, nope, it's top 20 this time. Why? Fuck you. That's why. There's too much good shit out there.
You know, it's funny too. Like, I feel like to that point, like when you're younger, you're like, you are bashed for being a fan, right? Like, it's not cool to like this or it's not cool to like that. I'm the exact same way. Like, fuck that. I will promote and support everything I fucking love all the time. I'll like, hey, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to this. Like, constantly, because why the fuck not? Like, I want them. I want more people.
Why else are you doing this?
Yeah, like that's how. Like, if you're making shit, you want people to do the same thing. Why the fuck wouldn't you do that for others, right? Like, if you love something, share it, right? That makes it broader and gets more people into it.
And if you don't like how brutal and mean and indifferent this world is to things that are awesome, man, be the change you want to see. I'm just misappropriating quotes all over the place, but like seriously, just it takes a decision. You can make a decision right now.
Someone says they like Red Hot Chili Peppers. Good Jesus!
I was gonna say, I don't think anyone here needs to have someone in a loud ass jacket tell them that, but like whatever, that happened.
Well, on that note, This is Revolution will definitely be back tomorrow. We'll be having a panel discussion with the whole crew. Kuba, Jean Bajlan, Pascal, and myself. We'll be talking about a bunch of topics, and I'm going to be talking about the potential ballot measure of AB 1400, I believe it is, of socialized healthcare for all in California.
Which Gavin Newsom said, I haven't read it. Oh, yeah, okay. You haven't read it, huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure he hasn't.
Pull the other one.
He has somebody reading it to him while they feed him grapes at the same time.
Exactly. Individually peeled, for sure, yeah.
Yes. We'll be talking Kazakhstan, because Kuba said he wanted to get into that, and Pascal wants to, I forget what he wants to talk about, but it's going to be a fun show, and I'll be in the Bay Area this weekend, so I won't be on air Saturday. But if anybody wants to meet me at Denny's in San Pablo, you can meet me at Denny's in San Pablo. For a beatdown? Yeah, if you guys want to fight, you want to fuck, whatever you want to do, we can do it at Denny's.
How you build
behind
community.
the Arby's?
How you build community. You go to Denny's and say, "What's up, bitch? You don't want it?" But seriously, I'll be at my landlord literally lives across the little walkway. I'm sure she's like, "What the fuck is he doing there on that show?" So I'll be at Denny's this weekend. If you guys want to come hang out, let's hang out at Denny's. We've been talking about doing this. Let's do it. Denny's tour starts at San Pablo Denny's, where that dude got shot.
Proof of concept.
Well, that was a while back. They're not shooting people there anymore, I don't think. You're totally fine. Totally fine.
We'll see. The night's young. I'd be disingenuous if I didn't throw in a shout out to my dudes Forrest and Andy World for Movie Night Extravaganza. It's all 80s fantasy movies this month. So Movie Night Extravaganza on Twitch, YouTube. this idea I had because it was, pretty much like winter doldrums, like everything sucks, like Omicron. I'm like, man, we're like in all this depressing Criterion Collection shit. And I'm like, you know what? Like, let's fuck with some Dark Crystal. Let's fuck with some Labyrinth and Princess Bride. And let's just do movies like that this month. So if you want a little escapism, which has got like basically nothing to do with what I was just doing right now, those are the movies that we're doing this month. And it's a good show. If you like movie shows, it's pretty good. I was a fan before I was even on it. So
it's a fun show. I'm really glad that you and Forrest were able to link up. Also, Cobra, keep recording yourself playing riffs, and I will keep trying to steal them. So, that's all you need to know.
And that's all a Jason Miles promise. Man.
It's a Jason Miles promise. Conan Neutron. So if you
Dangerous Nomenclature, new EP, like I don't know, nice like 6 weeks or something like that. Like so neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Go to Spotify if you want to share a crop with me. Like whatever. But it's all the places you get your music.
So I did
a tour in 2022.
I did a tour with Conan, and I had to learn Conan's songs, right? And he writes very differently than me. Different tunings, everything. But if you listen to the music that I play in between the Sex Pistols clip and the intro to that video, I wrote that after being on tour with you.
Oh, sick.
It doesn't sound anything like that you think you've done, but that is totally influenced by Conan Neutron. I will admit that since I have you guys here. I steal Cobra riffs when he puts his riffs up on Instagram. Don't you ever fucking think that I don't take those things and play them backwards? And you know what? I'm going to move it up the fretboard and tune it down to drop F sharp, and fucking Cobra will never know. Take that, bitch.
Drop F sharp.
Look, you can't steal what is given freely, right?
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me, man. I miss you too dearly, Cobra. I'm gonna hit you up when I get in if we have time to say hello. I would love to see you. And I am serious about Denny's, and we are